Every investigation on this channel starts with the question, not what went wrong at the moment of failure, but what was already in place that made failure possible. That's the structural clarity question. Let's begin. Someone says, quick question, and before they're done with the sentence, you already know. You know it won't be quick. You've adjusted your afternoon before they've even asked, and they know it too, which is why they said quick in the first place. Everyone has learned this reflex. Almost nobody finds it strange anymore. But it is strange, because a reflex that universal doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from something happening the same way over and over in organizations that otherwise have nothing in common. So today, we're going to follow one of those requests all the way through, and this one has a detail that makes it worth investigating. The message comes in at 9:12 on a Tuesday morning. Quick question. Can you move the milestone date? Should take 5 minutes. It's a reasonable message, polite, specific, and here's the detail. It's not even wrong, because the change itself, opening the plan, moving the date, saving the file, took about 5 minutes. Yes, that's right. The task took 5 minutes. The afternoon took the afternoon. So this is the question we have to answer. If the task really did take 5 minutes, where'd the rest of the time go? And why does everyone everywhere already know to brace for it? When time disappears like this, organizations reach for a familiar set of explanations. The estimate was bad. Somebody padded it, or somebody lowballed it. It was scope creep. The request grew after it was accepted. The person overcomplicated it. Too cautious, too bureaucratic, too territorial. Or, the one I love, the catch-all. Too many meetings, too much process, a communication problem. We should be fair to the explanations because sometimes they are true. Estimates really are careless sometimes. Scope really does change. Some people genuinely do use complexity to avoid action. But every one of those explanations shares an assumption that the 5-minute estimate was wrong. And in this case, in the cases you're probably thinking of right now, it wasn't. The task did take 5 minutes. The estimate of the task was right. Most people would file that under just how work is. But that detail, the estimate being right, is exactly the one that breaks every explanation on the list. So whatever consumed the afternoon, it wasn't the task. That's the clue. We follow the time. 9:20, first stop. Which plan's the real one? There are 3 versions in circulation. One on the shared drive, one attached to an email, one someone exported to a slide. Before the date can move, someone has to determine which document the organization actually believes. That took 40 minutes. And notice, that's not editing, that's investigation. 10:05, second stop. Who's allowed to move the date? The date was set in a kickoff meeting 8 months ago. The person who set it changed roles in the spring. No one ever decided who owns it now, which means before this date can move, someone has to make a decision about who makes the decision. 11:30, third stop. What's attached to the date? 2 of the work streams planned against it, a testing window, a handoff. Neither appeared in the request because the person making the request couldn't see them. It's not an accusation, it's the point. 1:15, fourth stop. And this is the one that changes the temperature of the afternoon. The old date appears in a commitment made outside the team. Moving it is no longer an edit, it's a conversation, with review with sign-off with someone asking, who approved this? 2:40, the coordination. Who changes what, in which order, so the plan, the tracker, and the calendar don't contradict each other by Friday. 3:50, the downstream ripple. One deliverable shifts a week. One promise gets renegotiated. One team hears about it for the first time and asks, reasonably, why they're hearing about it last. 4:30, the change is made. It takes 5 minutes. Go back to the message. Quick question. Can you move the milestone date? Should take 5 minutes. Read it again, knowing what we now know. Every word of it's true. and almost all of the work is missing from it. The request described the visible action. It didn't describe the organization required around that action, the decision that had to be located, the ownership that had to be resolved, the dependencies that had to be checked, the people who had to be found, the approval that had to be earned, the coordination that had to be sequenced. Here's the discovery. A 5-minute task isn't necessarily a 5-minute work system. And now the deeper part, because there's one more thing this afternoon tells us, and it's the part that most explanations miss. The work system didn't appear in the afternoon. Nothing about the work grew after 9/12. The 3 versions, the orphaned decision, the dependent work streams, the outside commitment, all of it was already there, already attached to the date before the message was ever sent. The afternoon didn't create the complexity. It revealed complexity the request had left out. Nothing in the request was false. It simply represented the part of the work where visible from where the requester stood. Accurate and incomplete at the same time. And an organization that keeps acting on accurate but incomplete pictures of its own work will keep being surprised by its own afternoons. Now, an honest complication because this investigation doesn't hold unless we're fair. Some 5-minute tasks really are 5-minute tasks. Some requests get wrapped in process they never needed. Some estimates are careless, and yes, some people do use complexity as a place to hide. The presence of invisible work should be investigated, not assumed. But when the same quick request expands the same way month after month across different people, the pattern deserves a better explanation than people are slow. Repetition is what turns an annoyance into evidence. Recurrence justifies the inquiry. It doesn't predetermine the answer. Now think about the person who spent that afternoon. From outside, what did they look like? Slow maybe, cautious, making a simple thing complicated. Their day produced one visible artifact, a date moved, 5 minutes of evidence for 7 hours of work. And here's what that does over time. The estimates they give start to sound inflated because they're counting work no one else can see. Their performance gets judged against the visible task, not the actual system. And gradually, quietly, they become something no org chart will ever show. The informal coordination layer that keeps quick requests from becoming quiet disasters. No one set out to build that burden, but someone had to carry it. And here's the shift this investigation leaves you with. The next time a small task lands on your desk, or leaves it, ask one question before you accept the estimate. Am I estimating the action or the work system around it? And if you want to see the system before it finds you, these are the questions that make it visible. What decision has to be made? And does anyone currently own it? Who's affected that isn't in this conversation? What does this depend on? What approval or risk is attached? What changes downstream? And who coordinates all of this after the request is accepted? Those aren't process questions. They're how you find the part of the work your picture of the work left out. One more time, the message. Quick one. Should take 5 minutes. The message never changed. What changed is what you can see in it. It was accurate and it was incomplete, both at once. That's what made it so hard to argue with and so darned expensive to accept. Sometimes the person who seems to be making a simple request complicated is the person discovering how complicated it already was. So here's the structural clarity question to take into your week. In your organization, what work only becomes visible after the commitment has already been made? And who's carrying it right now? I'm Cindy Jeffrey. This is Structural Clarity. If you've seen this pattern in your own organization, subscribe to Structural Clarity. We'll keep looking beneath the visible problem at the roles, decisions, and structures that determine whether complex work actually moves. And if there's an organizational mystery you'd like me to investigate, leave it in the comments.